Welcome back to the Form Method Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Smith. If this is your first time listening, FORM is the framework we use for every conversation. It stands for family, occupation, recreation, and motivation because the strongest relationships and the most meaningful conversations are built on more than just business. Today I'm joined by Britt, and we're diving into what businesses often get wrong about AI, why chasing tools instead of strategy leads to disappointment, and how intentional, incremental implementation actually moves that needle. We also talk about John's work in cybersecurity from the managed services space and why mentorship and relationships matter just as much as technology. Along the way, we even get into Legos, home automation, and how creative outlets help clear the mind and spark better thinking. A quick heads up, we did have a few technical hiccups during the recording, which is pretty ironic considering John is an IT expert. But trust me, the insight and takeaways from this conversation are absolutely worth it. Let's get into episode 2 of the Form Method Podcast. Welcome, John. How are you today?
I am good, Austin. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I've got to give you a lot of credit. I've had this idea for this podcast for years, and you and I were sitting down having a one-to-one because we hadn't seen each other in 3, 4, 5 years. And it was one of those things that we sit down and we almost basically started right back where we were. You asked me the question of like, hey, what are you working on? And I was telling you and different things. And you said, yeah, I'm in the process of starting a podcast. And I was like, I've been wanting to do a podcast. And you said right there at Red Horn, just do it, man, just do it. You really need to just do it. And I left that conversation, called my dad and called Tony and a couple other guys. And I was like, what are you thinking about me doing a podcast? They're like, what are you waiting on? You've been talking about this for years. So John, you're the second person to be on the podcast. So I thought it was only right to have you on here. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. I was looking to inspire you to greatness and you followed through, and that's always enjoyable. That makes me happy.
Well, good. Well, hopefully after today, you'll be like, all right, I need to get my podcast up and running.
I do. In fact, I think it was this Wednesday. It was supposed to be the first release, and I got to it, and I'm like, oh, I'm just not ready for it. So it's coming. It's in the works.
Awesome. So, John, let's get started with your background. We're in the family section. We're in the F. So where did you grow up and what was your family life like?
So I grew up in the Fort Worth area, specifically the Richland Hills area of Fort Worth. And what was the other part of that? Sorry, my bad.
No, and what was your family life like?
So had a single mom, low income family, single mom, but we had my grandparents there as a great support. And quite honestly, recently I was having the conversation where I was realizing the male role model and mentorship that I had in my grandfather, and then also just throughout my whole life, how that has really been something that's been there. And it's not the kind of thing that you think of all the time, but I was realizing how grateful I needed to be for having those male role models throughout my life, even though I was in a single parent, mother-led household.
Who were some of the bigger influences that you had, early in life?
Those are definitely up there. My grandfather definitely up there in the influences. And he was a character because he was an engineer. So a lot of times, even talking with me, he'd be talking over my head. But, there were lots of people that would say that he talks over their head anyways, like didn't matter what age they were. And so, but I did learn quite a few things from him and quite a few lessons in life from him. I was kind of his little shadow for many, many, many years.
That's great. I love it. Now, grew up in Fort Worth. Did you go to college? Where'd you go to college? If you didn't go to college, that's fine. Neither did I.
I did 2 semesters at Tarrant County College. Yeah. And I think it was either that or it was Tarrant County Junior College. but I know that the name changed right about the time I was there. So I can't remember, yeah.
So you went to 2 colleges then.
Yeah, there you go. I've gone to.
So what were some valuable lessons from your upbringing and, being your grandfather's shadow that still shows you how to lead today?
Honestly, one of the things that he just instilled in me is tinkering and fixing things. Like, taking something that you would normally throw away, especially in today, you would just throw it away and fix it and, make it work. I mean, it's hilarious that it just, I guess maybe a month ago, we had an air fryer that we had gotten for Christmas, or I think it was Christmas last year, and for some reason it had stopped working. And I was like, by gosh, I'm just going to take this thing apart and figure out what's wrong with it. And I did, and I fixed it. But I think he is the one that showed me that you can do that you can take things apart and put them back together and figure out why they're not working and that kind of thing. So I credit that to him a lot.
Well, which I would imagine has helped you in the business that you're in now, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But
Sure.
you, so are there any family traditions or belief that you've carried into your business?
Family traditions or belief. I mean, my family has all kinds of traditions, and now that I'm married, we have even more traditions. But none of the like Brits never or Brits always, not that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we have traditions around Christmas. We every other year we're going back and forth to Reno, and then the next year it'll be here. So this year we're actually going to be in Reno for Christmas, which will be nice.
So, would you say you have any lessons from your early life or even high school, college that still guide you today?
I know there are, and I was thinking about this, like early lessons. And I was trying to come up with what I thought would be a good one, but I don't think I have anything off the top of my head. I know that I learned a lot of things growing up, where I did, the way I did, around the people that I did, but a lot of my sort of early childhood tends to be a blur. And I don't know if that's an ADD thing or ADHD thing or what, but it's sometimes it'll come back to me and I'll be like, oh, crystal clear. I remember doing this and that happened, but then sometimes I'm like, man, I'm like, I remember childhood, but I don't remember all the specifics. Just yeah, I love spending time around people that I knew growing up, especially church friends, because I get to ask them. I'm like, okay, remind me, what did we do? What did we do back then? Tell me some story. Tell me some John stories. Like if you were meeting somebody for the first time, and you were trying to describe something with John. Tell me what that would be like, and we usually have a good time reminiscing over. I I remember that, or I don't remember that at all.
So, John, for people who may not know your company, what is U.S. Technical Services Group?
So traditionally we were break fix, which that just means that when something was broken, we would come out and fix it if it was IT or technology related. So a server went down, your, internet stopped working, whatever it was that broke, we would just come out and fix it. And then transition about
Which is that tinkering, which is
Well,
definitely the tinkering.
it goes back to that, troubleshooting, right? And solving problems. And then it became, I was having a conversation with another business owner, and they had transitioned to what they call the managed service provider model. So instead of the break fix model, their managed service provider model. For the longest time, I couldn't wrap my head around it. To be honest, I thought it was a money grab. I thought these are just, crazy people trying to take money for no good reason. And he finally explained it to me in a way that I could really understand it. And this is really a pivotal moment in my life and my career, because ultimately the way he described it, I realized that the way I was doing things doesn't align with what I want to do and how I want to be and what I want to do. And so it was that he said, John, think of it this way. You cannot have a good day unless your client is having a bad day. Something is broken and they need it fixed and it's costing them money. And so you can't have a good day without them having a bad day. And then he took it a step further to say, and John, I know that you have a big heart for people. And so when you see them on their bad day, you're wanting to give them discounts and you're wanting to, because you feel bad for them. They're having a bad day. What you need to do with the managed service provider model or the MSP model is you can both have good days. You can be in business, stay in business, and make money, and they can too. And now you're incentivized to keep them up and running instead of incentivized for hoping that their stuff breaks. And that was pivotal for me. I mean, that changed that day. I said, okay, what am I going to do to make this work?
So, John, you've been in the IT space for a long time now. How'd you get started and what made you get into the technology space?
It's kind of a funny story, honestly, Austin. It's so when I was younger, my mom, single parent, was adamantly opposed to gaming consoles. She would not get me a gaming console. That was an argument that I didn't even try to win. But he was okay with me getting a computer. And so I'm like, all right, if I can get a computer, I know there's games on computers, it started off, realistically, it started off even before then. We were staying at somebody else's house. I think we were living there while they were out of the country, and they had a Commodore VIC-20, and I was like 5 to 6 years old. And
Mhm.
on this Commodore VIC-20, I was writing my own games and saving them on a cassette tape. This thing took cassette tapes to save your programs, and I don't remember that at all. That's totally told to me by my mom and a few other people that saw those games. Later on down the line, I really wanted to play games. I was probably like 10, 15, no, 10 to 12, somewhere in there. And I convinced my mom to get, she got through a couple of friends, got me a computer, but it was a monochrome monitor. It was green, right?
Yeah.
And the computer was really, I think it was like 8 megahertz or 10 mega. I mean, it was slow. But anyways, that taught me I had to learn again with the whole tinkering or fixing problems. Okay, I want color. I want a color monitor. So I had to figure out how to install a video card a different video card into this computer. And that started sort of a love affair with hardware,
Mm.
where, I then took that knowledge and turned it into building computers in my later teens, 15, 16. I was working for a local computer store. And I think I was building 7 or 8 computers a day.
Wow.
He would buy all the parts and have them ready, and I'd just go down the line building computers. And I did end up. It's funny because the gaming aspect of it, there were LAN parties. I mean, this is kind of before
Oh, yeah.
was really a big thing. So it was a LAN party, and so then I had to figure out how to do networking. Right, that was my first foray into building crossover cables. So my buddy and I could either I'd load up my whole big computer and take it over to his house, or he'd load up his and bring it over to mine, and we'd plug in a crossover cable and we could, play against each other, Duke Nukem or, something,
Absolutely.
and that taught me networking, right? I ended up learning TCP IP and all these sort of fundamentals of how you network computers together. And it's just technology has been something I've always just grown in over time. Like whatever the thing is, I'm usually interested in the new thing. And so it's no surprise that now we're getting into AI and AI enablement, which is it's less tech and tools than it is business strategy. I said strategy. It's business strategy. It's more of this is a great thing, but it's growing so quickly and so fast that if you are
Mhm.
focused on the best tool, well, I could build you the very best thing right now today, and tomorrow somebody's built one better, right? So I want to work with my customers, figure out what the business outcome is, create that tool with longevity. with an evergreen tool so that it can grow with as things change over time. It can improve over time, and we're not having to recreate something new. Maybe we're plugging in the latest AI to it to make it better, but we're not having to rewrite the entire tool.
What is something people often misunderstand about the AI enablement?
Well, okay. So the biggest thing is a lot of times I have clients come to me, or prospective clients come to me and say, this is what I want. And they already have in mind the one tool or the one thing that they think that they need in their business. And really what we do is come in and assess the entire business, top to bottom. And it doesn't matter how big the organization is, we can get enough of a cross section of the overall organization to understand it, and then how to actually apply AI in a way that's going to make the most impact. And we want to start with the things that will make the most impact. And I think of it kind of like this. If you change a tire, right, you don't stick it on and then just ratchet down just one of the bolt, right? If you do that, you end up bending the rim, breaking the tire. So I like to use AI in a way where it's like, we're going to do a little bit on the thing that is most needed, and we're going to see how does that go. So we're going to tighten that one down, and then we're going to go across from that and go, okay, let's add another layer of AI into the business, and let's tighten that down a little bit. We're not going to go the full measure, and then we're going to do a little bit more here and a little bit more there and a little bit more here and a little bit more there, and then we're going to start working our way back around, and the whole organization is going to get AI enabled, right? Or implemented. And it's not going to be a one thing. It's going to be the whole thing. And on top of that, each time that we're doing one of those projects, we're figuring out what is the business outcome that we want from this, and we're measuring against that. What is it that we're going for, and how soon are we going to get there in the path that we're in, right? Taking the steps that we're currently taking. And that is what is really going to help an organization transform to the AI age, right? If we just put in that one tool, I mean, there's an MIT study that came out earlier this year in 2025, and it was of hundreds of companies and their AI projects. And basically it said 90%, I think it was actually higher than 90%, but I'm going to say 90% of businesses that have some kind of AI project going on where they're trying to bring it into their business, they cannot show an ROI. And some of those that's after years, right? Because ChatGPT came out a couple of years ago, and that's when the majority of them are getting on board. But even before that, there were some that were doing machine learning, which was that version of AI, right? It's all AI, but that's what it was before ChatGPT came out. Now you've got the agentic AI stuff coming up, and those are just the search terms, really. But the reality is, these companies that have been doing it for a long time are not showing a return on their investment. They're not getting the business outcome that they want. And you have to. I mean, it's still business. Just because it's AI and it's interesting and exciting and it's new, this is still business. I've talked with companies that have spent millions of dollars on AI projects, and they don't have anything to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where strategy comes in. That's why I'm here, is to get in there, actually assess the business, talk to a cross section of the company, and figure out what it is they really need and where they can apply it, where it's going to make the most impact, and actually show them a return on that money.
With with your company, what are you guys looking to accomplish with that, and how to help companies?
We want to come alongside and partner up with a company and go, okay, what is it that we can do to move the needle, right? We're going to assess, and just like you go to the doctor, right? You go to the doctor and you have a problem, and then they run tests. We're going to run tests. We're going to assess. And then we're going to come back from that and go, okay, here are the areas in which we think if we put this in place, and we're not going to make it massive. We're going to go for small, incremental. We're going to have a roadmap, right? That's part of the assessment, is coming up with that roadmap of how we're going to implement these different technologies, the different versions of AI. And not all of it is AI. Some of it is just basic automation, right? Or maybe it's automation with a little bit of AI, not massive tweaks, but little ones, and then fail, rinse, and repeat, because something may not work the way that we think it will, but that's okay. We're going to reiterate quickly until we start to get the results that we're wanting. That is training that AI on the results that we're wanting. I don't see how you can ultimately fail, if we're going at it strategically.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, anything that you can have strategy around, if it's slow, methodical, implemented, constant evaluation and correction, you're absolutely right. It is very hard to fail. So, what would you say has been one of the proudest professional moments you've had since having your company?
They were trying, it stopped it. And I think for me, like, that's the moment, like, and I didn't shout it from the rooftops. It's funny. I've noticed that I have a hard time with sort of self promotion. It's not kind of my bread and butter. I have a hard time getting on social media and even showing vacations that I go on or this or that. I just try not to. To me, it seems like bragging, but that's one of those things that I think for me was one of the proudest moments. And I was genuinely proud of the company, of the team, of how that worked out for our clients. I think one of the things that I face, or that a lot of other MSPs also face, is the challenge of people being out there doing something similar to what we do, but not apples to apples, and quoting people just this really ridiculously low price that, like, my tools cost more than what they're quoting them. And it is hard to get businesses to understand that it's not apples to apples. I mean, they think, you know, eh, well, this company can do it. Literally, this is the worst case. But I had one where a company had come into them and said, they'll do it for $300 per quarter. And the same client that I'm quoting at like $1,500 a month. If we have had the conversation enough, you understand that not only do I come with tools, but I come with experience and years of knowledge. And so, I mean, if you want to go that direction, go that direction. It's just, I don't think it's going to go well for you.
In your space, you really do get what you pay for. And,
Mhm.
$300 a quarter, $1,200 a year compared to $1,500 a month. If something breaks or you're hacked, you can't probably expect to get much help.
Yeah, and that was definitely on the cybersecurity. Like, the bigger costs there were the cybersecurity tools that we use to protect the business. And there was no way I couldn't, yeah, I couldn't even pay for my tools for what they were trying to charge them. And I'm sure that they got in there and they nickel and dimed them over every little bit. And, that's a business model that to me is just racing towards the bottom. I don't want to be the most expensive, right? But I am definitely not going to be the least expensive. And I'm honest and upfront with my clients about that.
Well, so John, when you're not running your company and reading Harvard studies about AI and all of the world of AI that is, what are you doing for fun? And what are you doing to recharge?
It's probably a combination of, working again with the home automation, the AI, that kind of things. And then also, with the Legos, I'm working through buckets of buckets of buckets of, I do not even want to guess how many hundreds of thousands of Lego pieces I have at this point. Cause when I buy in bulk, I'm buying like 30 some odd pounds of Legos at one time. Yeah.
Wow.
They come in the big tubs, right? Somebody is clearing out. And so I have probably 4 tubs worth that I need still to go through and just try to sort out and figure out what's in them, that kind of thing.
John, as we kind of wrap up here and we go into the end portion, the motivation, let's talk about what drives you. What are you working towards right now on the personal side, professionally? What's exciting you? And I like to emphasize this question with a scenario. You get up in the morning, you get out of bed, you're putting your feet down for the day, you're taking your breath and like, all right, time to go. What's pushing you? I mean, what's pushing you out of bed? What is that motivation to get you going for the day?
I think that is twofold. I'm genuinely just excited about AI. Like, because I'm a tech nerd, I am excited about what we can do with this technology and how powerful it is. The other thing is, more recently, I was, like I said earlier, reminded of mentors that I had, the male role models that I had that I might not have had being raised by just my mom. And God really gave me those mentors throughout my life in multiple different places. It started with my grandfather, and he was actually around up until 2010, 2011, something like that. But even before he passed, I've had several other male mentors and role models that have come into my life. Usually older, and one of them has been a client that has become one of my closest friends, was even at our wedding and was able to say the prayer for our reception. And, I look back at that and I'm amazed by that. And how that ties into the motivation is I recently decided that what I want to do is I want to find a way to build a nonprofit organization that supplies those opportunities. Like, it will find that, and specifically on the male side, it will find that young boy who does not have good male role models and will find someone who can be a good male role model and put them together. And maybe even identify key times where it's important
Mhm.
throughout your life to have those role models and, remind them to connect back up. Like, I don't know, I have no idea. I haven't done the research yet, but I'm thinking, what are some pivotal grades in school? Like, is third grade a pivotal grade? Okay, maybe that's the first time that you connect them up with, but then maybe, ninth grade, freshman year, or sophomore year is another pivotal grade. So you would remind them, hey, you had this great relationship, or you've had this relationship, reconnect with them and see how they're doing. And then just finding those different places in life where having a good role model, someone to instill in you honesty and integrity, and how to, I don't know, shake a hand and look people in the eye and have conversations. I think all of those things are super important. And I don't know that, being the nerdy person that I am, I could have just as easily been in a cave. I could have gotten in my room and just did nothing but work on computers and Legos. And then you and I couldn't be having this conversation because I wouldn't have the people skills. Right. I think I
Mhm.
owe it to those mentors that taught me how to do that, that I'm here where I am today. And so
Yeah,
can
no.
I create an organization that helps foster that for someone else? I think that's my motivation. I also look at folks like, I think it's RJ Letourneau. I know the name, the last name is Letourneau. And one of the things that he was able to do, he didn't go to college, but he founded a college that and paid for a college to exist. But um, he was able to do what they call a reverse tithe, where he was able to live off 10% and tithe 90%. And that's how he created Laterno University and some of these other nonprofits that he fed into. And that, to me, like, if God so wills it, that I can do something that produces that kind of money where I could legitimately live off of 10% or less and donate the rest to nonprofit organizations or found the starting of some, that would be amazing.
So, John, what kind of impact do you want your company to have on the people you serve?
If anything, I wanted to bring clarity, right? I think there's a lot going on. There's a lot of directions that they can go with in business and with AI, but I want to bring clarity and strategy to my customers. I think that's the thing. I don't want them out there floundering or wasting money when they could be putting it to better use.
And, it's kind of a loaded question, but how would you define success at this stage of life and business?
That's interesting question. How do you define success? I define success by the relationships I get to have. I feel like the older I get, it's less about the money that you make and it's more about the relationships you have, the friendships you have, those sort of deep friendships you have with people that you've been friends with a long time, your childhood friends. And I have several of those that we still keep in touch. I've got one that I think is from third grade that goes all the way back to third grade. And he and I are still really good friends. And he's on the city council up in North Richland Hills. And those are, to me, it's those relationships. I also have new relationships with folks like Chris Weiser and the 7-figure MSP team. And I love getting to meet new people and going over and hanging out with them and doing things with them. That to me is success. It's people.
So, when you think about your legacy as a leader of people and an entrepreneur, what do you hope people will?
Honestly, if it goes the way that I'm thinking, I really want that mentorship terminology to be the way they think. Like, I want them to think of me and go, because he was so grateful for the mentors that he had in his life, he then turned around and created this organization that helped mentor. 20 years from now, I'm hoping it's in the thousands.
And if you had an opportunity and Doc from Back to the Future pulls up to your house and says, get in the car. We're going back to high school. What would you
Okay.
say to the 16, 17-year-old John Britt?
That's a great question. That's all going to be okay. That don't stress so much. Definitely, get off your rear end and get things done, but don't stress so much and make great friendships and relationships, and that's what's going to propel you.
So before we close, what's one book, quote, or piece of advice that has stuck with you?
So one book, one quote, or what? Piece of advice.
What is piece of advice?
Okay. I've liked a lot of books. One that I've read that I really enjoyed, at least the first 3 or 4 chapters, and I have a theory around that, but the first 3 or 4 chapters was called Today We Are Rich, and I cannot tell you the name of the author. If I remember correctly, he was one of the guys that helped found Yahoo and got out of that. But Today We're Rich, and I really enjoyed that book and the stories in the beginning of it because it sound very familiar. Like, help people, right? Because you can. Not because you're in the book. I'm trying to remember. They weren't super well off. They weren't crazy rich, but they had enough for the day. And so they were able to reach out to somebody who was walking along the road and just needed some work just to make some money. They needed food to eat. And I think that's really powerful. That was back in the days where you had lots of farms and people would do that. They'd be even walking down the road and need something to do. As we go further and further into the future, yes, there's going to be farms, but they're not so much around us, right? But how do we find those places where we can reach out and help somebody, for today?
All right. Very last question, I promise, is what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from our conversation?
The one thing I hope that you take away from this conversation is
Besides IT guys can break things.
Right. IT guys know how to break stuff. They're the worst to try to have a conversation with or what do you call it? It's a virtual meeting with. I don't know. I think I hope that people walk away with a sense of who I am a little bit better, right? And that way, if they're thinking about doing business with myself or with somebody else that they think is like me, they maybe understand a little bit more of how we're thinking. And yeah. I will tell you, my ADHD brain has gotten me in trouble over the years where I don't always conform to the norms, right? And so I do like those areas where somebody can say, hey, I know I didn't respond the normal way, and I apologize. My brain was just in overload. Like, let me, now that I'm thinking about it more clearly, let me come back and help you do whatever it is you're trying to do. But but yeah, I mean, we get overwhelmed. I think everybody gets overwhelmed, right? And sometimes we don't respond the way that we should. And it's not a, sometimes it's just I can't really think about that right now. I've got five other things on my brain is processing. And that's one of the things that I like about the Legos is when I'm in it, I can zone into it and really focus and stop thinking about five things or six things at once and really focus in. And it's funny because in those moments, that's when that night, all of a sudden, the answers for a lot of other problems that I've been having will come to me. I'll walk back into those problems and go boom, 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 and they're all fixed just because I let my brain focus for a while on one thing instead of trying to do all the things. Yeah.
So this has been a pleasure. I have to give you a lot of props for helping me get this started, and we'll definitely have to have you on again, and
I'd love to
and
do
I'm
it.
sure we'll see you around. But where can people find you?
So ustsg.com. My email is john.britt@ustsg.com. And if you're in the side of things in Austin, I'm primarily involved in ones up in the North Austin area, Cedar Park, but hopefully I'll run into you.
I appreciate you, and have a great day and great weekend.
You too.
Conversations like this remind us that strategy, education, and relationships do matter, whether we're talking about technology, business, or in life. I'm Austin Smith with Barton Creek Lending Group. I help buyers, homeowners, and retirees make smart, strategic mortgage decisions through education, not pressure. If you want to understand your options and make confident decisions, you can find me, this podcast, and my book, The Reverse Mortgage Playbook, at austinsmith.com. At the end of the day, I want you to be smart and strategic. Like, subscribe, and remember, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen more, talk less, and have impactful conversations. We'll see you next time.